In my last update video a couple weeks ago, I kind of gave the initial impressions that things were not going super great. And that was largely to do with me becoming a little bit more lax or less regimented, I guess, in aspects of keeping up with medical keto or with the various metabolic therapies I'm trying to do to manage my schizoaffective disorder. And after that, it did actually kind of get even worse. But I shared that I was going to start using the continuous ketone monitor, this thing here, to get a more kind of minute by minute understanding of what was happening at any given time with my ketone levels. And what I found was that they were very, very low, especially relative to what I have been for most of this project, whereby I have been consistently kind of within the 3s to even sometimes 6s millimoles per liter measurements of ketones. And that's kind of where I've felt my best. And so it made sense that when I started to feel not very well, and I'll explain a little bit more in a bit what I mean by that, it coincided with lower ketone levels. And what I mean is like 0. Sometimes 2 as low as that, which is basically not even in ketosis, to low 1s. And so that was probably a pretty big indication for me that something was not going well. And so I mentioned that I just wasn't feeling well. And so what I mean by this is I started to just feel like my brain wasn't really working. I was really tired. I felt lethargic. I had a lot of brain fog, and I felt like I couldn't really keep up with lines of thinking or keep up in conversations or even engage in like a level of critical thinking that I typically can or want to be able to. And that seems like kind of an abstract concept to have, but it really was a difference that I felt. And then when I checked my ketones, it makes sense that those were kind of correlated in terms of having difficulties with how my brain was functioning and the lower levels of ketones that my body was producing. And just a reminder to maybe make a little bit more sense, switching to keto is effectively putting my body into a state of ketosis whereby it burns fat to create ketones, which is what my brain and my body use as energy instead of glucose. And so it makes sense that when I've transitioned into this state, the less ketones I'm producing, the less well my body and brain are able to function. So I kind of had a little freak out. I didn't know what to do. Reached out to Nicole, my keto coach, and she was very, very helpful. She immediately was like, okay, this happens. We can fix this. There's always some sort of explanation or something we can do to improve ketone production or to improve how you're feeling. So this was probably about a week and a half, maybe almost 2 weeks ago. She had me start tracking what I was eating again in the app Chronometer just to get a really good understanding of what macros I was consuming and what my fat to protein to carbohydrate ratio actually looked like, because I didn't really know because I stopped tracking a few months ago. And so that felt okay. It didn't feel too cumbersome or whatever to get back into that. And it was probably a really good exercise to kind of bring my awareness back to really focusing on hitting the target macros. And in doing that, we also were able to identify a potential problem. I had started to consume coconut milk mixed with a bit of whey protein powder as this nice kind of little pudding-esque treat. But Nicole shared with me that, well, of course, that was probably too high in protein, but she also shared with me that whey products can impede production of ketones. And so that could have been at play in terms of my lower ketone levels. So I cut that out. I cut out whey products and kept going, but I was still experiencing kind of low ketone levels. And so Nicole suggested that we kind of recalibrate the macros that I'm aiming to hit, because what I was actually on was more of a modified Atkins diet, whereby I think I was hitting a 1.5 to 1 ratio of fats to protein and carbs. And so she moved me more towards a true keto diet of 2 to 1. So 2 portions of fat to every 1 portion of protein and carbohydrates. So what this effectively did was it increased the amount of fats that I was supposed to consume per meal or just in a day, and it decreased the amount of protein, and the carbs just kind of stayed the same because I remained at 20 grams of carbs a day. So she calculated what kind of macros I should hit based on my weight and activity level and gave me kind of guidelines about what I should aim to hit at 3 meals a day at each meal. And that was really helpful in terms of, again, bringing awareness to being more mindful of those ratios that I need to hit in order to be in medical ketosis. So that was kind of the first step that she recommended I do, but she also kind of laid out several other steps in case those things didn't work. And so the second thing, if that was still not increasing my ketone levels, was to incorporate MCT oil. MCT oil is kind of a nice natural option for something that you consume in order to boost your ketone levels. So that was the next thing she suggested, which I did try a couple of times. If that still didn't work, she suggested to try some forms of exogenous ketones. And this was more so to kind of create a bridge because I was really struggling with how I was feeling and my brain functioning and whatnot. And that wasn't really fun. So as a kind of means of getting me through until my body started to increase its own production of ketones, this was an option to kind of help me feel better in the meantime. Now, I did share a video several months back where I tried a brand of exogenous ketones that was sweetened with sucralose, and it actually kicked me out of ketosis. So I was very careful to only try the brands that she suggested. This was one of them. It's called Shift and comes in little individual packets like this. And I think I maybe took these 3 times, 3 different, so like 1 packet per day for 3 days. And I was quite impressed with how it actually did really help to increase my ketone levels and also how that effectively helped me to feel better and to be able to function at a higher level again. And I was lucky that this combined with, I think I actually increased my exercise, and I think that that helped as well as all of these other steps in terms of increasing my ketone production again. That's kind of where I stopped because I have now gotten to a place where I have leveled off a little bit more again. Let's check what my ketones are right now. I'm at 3.5 millimoles per liter. You can't see it? Can't see it? Can you see that? So it's not working to show you this, but this is the continuous ketone monitor app, and it says I'm at 3.5 millimoles per liter right now. And so that is a really good range for me personally. That's where I feel really good. And I definitely do feel better than I did a couple weeks ago. But the next step, if none of those had worked either, was to kind of experiment a little bit more with fasting, intermittent fasting. And she just cautioned to really be mindful of supplementing electrolytes, particularly if you're trying something like that too. So I mentioned that I increased my exercise, and I don't know for sure if that was one of the big factors that allowed my body to produce more ketones, but it seems that way based on just the graph tendencies before and after exercise and whatnot. I did go on a really, really long run yesterday. It was like 25 kilometers, and I think that that really, really helped to boost my ketone production again and get my body kind of kick-started in terms of producing more ketones. I understand that's probably not a great recommendation to just make to anyone, but I think there is something to be said about regular exercise and how that can really help metabolic processes and increase your ketone production. So I felt like it was really, really important for me to share these 2 or so weeks, or maybe even a little bit longer. I was struggling before that too, this period of struggle that I experienced with trying to follow the medical ketogenic diet, because I think that hiccups like this are probably pretty common for people. And especially if you maybe don't have the specialized guidance of a keto coach or a psychiatrist who knows a lot about this medical intervention. And so I just kind of want to give you assurance that these things can happen, but there are ways to troubleshoot them and figure out how to improve what's going on. It was also kind of difficult to assess if this was a problem with my ketone levels and that end of things, or if this was a product of what I'm trying to do with reducing my medication as well, because withdrawal has definitely been a big factor in terms of me not feeling as well too. And so it was kind of difficult to kind of assess, okay, is this just me experiencing more withdrawal symptoms, or is there something that I really need to address and figure out going on here? And so it was super, super helpful to have Nicole's guidance in terms of figuring out what could potentially be going wrong and what I could do to fix those things. So while things are still kind of leveling out, I think I'm going to continue to track my food in the app Chronometer, just because that allows me to stay mindful about what I'm consuming and whatnot, and really trying to be diligent about getting enough fat and not going overboard on protein or carbs even. I also shared in our last video about how I kind of moved into this space where it just felt like, oh, I can loosen the grip on the reins, or however you want to say it, in terms of feeling like maybe I was just healed and I didn't need to be as diligent about this medical intervention anymore because I was healed. I don't experience schizoaffective disorder anymore. And so I can just live my life however I want. And so I think that this was also probably an important and good reminder, again, that that's not really the case. This is very much a medical intervention that I need to keep working at if I want to maintain a level of stability and wellness. So I'm super glad that this seems to be going in a good path in terms of my ketone levels leveling out and just kind of being able to feel better and more functioning again. I guess next steps going forward are I had the okay from my psychiatrist to go down from 20 milligrams of my antipsychotic, which I'm currently on, to 0 milligrams as of July 16th. But having heard from various experts and also through my own experience, I don't think I'm going to do that. That feels a little bit too drastic. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is look for a compounding pharmacy that could help me to lower the dosage in smaller increments. What I'm thinking, I think, is to go down by about 5 milligrams per month, if that's feeling okay. So looking at perhaps getting completely off in 4 months. But again, very open to recalibrating that trajectory or goal as needed based on how it feels and what happens. But that's kind of where I'm moving into next. So thank you so much, as always, for watching this video and for following along throughout this whole metabolic health journey. I continue to be really excited by this process and how it has affected my life. And I hope that it is helpful for others out there to be sharing this process as well. As always, wishing you and your loved ones good health, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.